There we are. Welcome to the class here. The Epic Drum Recording Masterclass here. Hopefully my mic is coming through now. Let me know if you guys can hear me and also where you guys are watching from. Oh my goodness. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's just delayed by like 10 seconds.
All right, well, welcome. Thank you guys for joining us. Let me know where you guys are watching from. We're going to try and go through 3 things that I think are going to be really, really helpful for you in the recording process here. Please let me know if there's any issues here. I am a noob at live streaming, and but I'm going to try and give you the best value we can on the time. So first things first, if you've been watching for any amount of time, I want you to know that, or you might actually already know that I have been working on a full Epic Drum recording course, and it feels like I've been working on it forever. This masterclass is not going to be a big sales pitch on that. I do want to just mention that it will be available for pre-sale today. I'll put a link to that in the description. But essentially what this is we're going to distill down the 3 most important things from the entire course down into this stream. So if you can get these three things right, it's going to be really, really helpful to the recording process. I also want to mention that I'm going to do some Q&A at the end of this. So if you have questions, hang around till the end. I'm going to do my best to get to them, and we'll have some fun, chat about that stuff. Next thing. Okay, so a lot of you guys probably, I've discovered, may not know who the heck I am or why anything I'm saying matters. So I want to just give you a little brief background, as brief as I can. I grew up in Illinois, and this is what people think of sometimes. It was nothing like this. It was a small town, Peoria, Illinois, cornfields. Shout out to anyone in the middle of nowhere working. I'm seeing some no audio, so let me know if you guys are getting audio. Grew up there, Midwest, playing in bands, musician, drummer, myself, playing a lot of not super awesome music, but it was a motivating factor getting into recording. Eventually we wanted to start making some demos and things like that for the band, and I, being the drummer, seemed to be the only one who had the interest to actually start collecting some gear. So I think 14, 15, I started my own studio, my own Epic home studio, as you can see here with these beautiful photos. I was an excellent photographer at the time. Got an 8-channel interface with some mic pre's. I had a little bonus room where I glued foam to the wall in hopes that would do something, and began recording my drums. One of the first things I discovered recording my drums at home is that they didn't sound anything like the records that I listened to. And I was a little confused by that. So I presumed that the solution was like, oh, you know what? This recording thing, like I really got to get good at audio engineering and learn all these mix tricks. I think the mix tricks are the thing that's going to do it for me. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that is not the solution. Took me a while to learn that. Eventually I moved out to California, where I went to a recording trade school, which was pretty expensive, $20,000, $30,000 for 6 months of recording school. And, it was pretty transformative, pretty fun. I had a little, it like crossed the T's and dotted the I's for some things that I just had no experience with. And eventually I started to, 6 months, I think the day after I graduated from recording school was my first day working at this place. This was is a commercial studio, but it was built by this guy, Bill Putnam, commissioned for Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby. It was essentially, they wanted to build a studio that they could get away from the label execs and record their music without the interference of them. Now it is known as East West Studios. East West Sample Library bought it and refurbished it and turned it into this magnificent place. So I basically, recording noob coming out of trade school, first day was in this place, and it was terrifying and exciting and amazing. Literally, I remember in Studio 2 on my first day, the Chili Peppers were in there, and they had been in there for 6 months. 6 months of studio time in a place like this ain't cheap. It was pretty exciting. There was 5 rooms, and a lot of magic happening in those rooms. Commercial, huge string scoring sessions in Studio 1 pretty much every week. Studio 2 was kind of the rock room. It was like the drum room. Drums obviously sounded great in all the rooms, but Studio 2 was a really fantastic drum room. Studio 3 was like the Beach Boys, Pet Sounds room, no booths, anything like that. So this is where I sort of cut my teeth and learned all the things I'm going to share with you today, which are, it's not the mix. And if you're at the point where you're at the mix and you're trying to fix it, like something has gone awry, something has gone wrong. And what we want to do is we want to learn how to get things right at the source. Through my years there, I basically learned from being on sessions and watching great engineers and drummers and cartridge companies and producers come in that, like, oh, they're like, it's what we're doing today. That's the sound. Like, I had a specific moment on a day. I'm trying to not get too carried away in stories here. Vinny Caliuta, drum tech, everything came in. I just had this like light bulb moment where like, oh, that drum does sound like a finished record. Like that drum. Like, oh, I should learn more about drums. I'm a drummer and I feel like I essentially know nothing about drums. But I was there for 5.5 years, got to work with, everyone from Sum 41 to Ghost to John Legend, Dawes, Justin Timberlake. Crazy, crazy sessions, and learned a lot. And I'm going to try and encapsulate it into a process that you can use yourself. Because as cool as all of that was, it was pretty, focused on just making records. So I am going to consolidate this, and if you can, take some notes. Again, put some questions in the chat if you got them, and let's get started. So first thing, and forgive me, some of this stuff is going to sound really obvious and really rudimentary if you already know, but if you don't know, this can be just completely change the game. Okay, so number one, gather information. Every session we would do, there would be, like a week or so of communication beforehand. And that would involve, communicating who's coming in, what are we doing, where are those people going to be, what mics do we need to use, where we put them in the room, how the headphone's going to connect. Gathering as much information on the session as possible. Now, if you're in a home studio, which I presume a lot of you are, let me know if you're in a home studio. I'm in a home studio. This is a whole house. It's kind of crazy. This is a Nashville thing. But the information and being prepared in the beginning is kind of the cheat code to getting to the end in the right place. Because if you just willy-nilly start picking drums and putting mics up and then starting, you're going to get to a point where you're like, it's not exactly right and I don't exactly know why, right? So you want to have as much information. What style of music is it? What genre? What do we want the drums to sound like? What kind of performance is this going to be? And literally write that down, document it. Then you want to make a plan. So the plan is going to, be a combination of different things here. The first, and really, this is going to sound silly, but this is super important, is called an input sheet. Okay? Input sheet. This is not rocket science. This is basically a spreadsheet that you just write down what the heck you're doing. What mics are we going to use? How many? What are they going on? What lines are they plugged into? Literally, kick drum mics plugged into starting on line 3, right? You might forget that in the moment, and you need to have this thing. This thing is going to save your freaking life on a session, even if you're in a home studio. I'm in a home studio. Sometimes I'm doing these sessions completely by myself. multiple, here's what happens if you don't do this. You do a session, you get great sounds, it goes great, right? And then you go on and you do another session, and maybe the second session doesn't go as great. And you're trying to remember, like, man, what did I do that last time? If you have a freaking input sheet, keep it. This is documentation. Getting information, making a plan, documenting this stuff is not sexy. It's not rocket science. It's not some secret. This is like the easy stuff that makes such a huge difference. So anyway, input sheet, document what you're doing, where it's going. Also on sessions, really what you're getting paid for is to make sure the session happens and there's no trouble, right? So this is your insurance policy if something's going wrong. You print off a grip of these things, have them lying around everywhere. So if you're trying to troubleshoot a line or noise or whatever, you can use this as your map to your session. So that's a part of preparing, right? Setting everything up. Execute. What does that mean? Just actually do the thing, right? Also in preparing, you have your session set up, things like that. Your tracks, you want to test everything. But executing is actually like doing the session, recording it. And then when you're done with the session, you want to have a period of analysis. You want to actually go back and ask yourself, how did it go? Did it go well? Did I do a good job? What could have been better? What went wrong? How can I avoid that in the next time? Take notes. Remind yourself. I mean, this is really not complicated stuff, but it makes a huge difference. And then if you can make those improvements over each time, it makes a huge difference. Okay, so that's the whole overview process. And then we're going to get into some of the details here. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about the sound, okay? So I'm going to break this into 3 different things here. Okay, so the sound, we're going to split between the source and the capture, okay? The sound, specifically, is the thing, right? Okay, it's the drum. This is what it took me a long time to learn. It wasn't some mixing thing. It wasn't some magic trick. It was my drums didn't sound that good. I didn't really know how to tune drums, and I didn't even really care. And having a great drum that's tuned well, that's set up right, maybe with some modification, all the details that go into the source, right? So the drum, the physical drum, which ones you pick, what you do with it, the cymbals you pick. I think audio engineers, especially when you haven't had the experience of working in a commercial studio, get really, really distracted by equipment, really distracted by microphones and positioning and things like that. And I just want to emphasize the freaking drum is the thing that makes the drum sound. The drum sound is the thing that makes the drum sound. Okay, I think I hammered that point. Also, you want to make those choices on the cymbals and the drums that actually serve the freaking song. All right. So let's talk about what matters in the drums. When you're picking drums, something that I got wrong early on and eventually learned about is the dimensions. And I'm going to focus in on the kick drum here. The size of the drum really, really matters. And specifically, you've got the diameter, which is the head size of the drum, right? That's the actual round part of the drum. And then there's the depth of the drum. Okay, so when I reference picking the size, I'm going to refer to the diameter most of the time, specifically with kick drum, right? So you can pick, let's talk about kick sounds, right? There's like tight and punchy kick drum sounds. There's like clicky kick drum sounds. Then there's like big, boomy, like resonant drum sounds, like John Bonham, or like sometimes like Black Keys type stuff. And the thing that makes the sound is not some mic technique or mix thing. It's the drum. That drum just sounds that way. And you can get to that outcome before you even reach for a mic if you just pick the right thing. So I want to play you a quick example here of a couple different kick drums. I do want to mention, so I have a handful of kick drums here, and maybe you don't have a handful of drums. That's fine. But I just want you to know that the thing that makes the sound is going to get you there. Okay, not some mic technique. Listen to the difference here. We've got, I've got a couple examples here of some drum performances, and listen to the kick drum. The only thing that changes here, nothing changes except for the drum. The snare drum might change, but ignore the snare drum for right now. Nothing changes with the mic or the recording or anything like that. Okay, so here's example one. This is a 24-inch kick drum, and it sounds freaking huge. Okay. Think about what you hear. Also, let me know that you guys are hearing this. Just want to make sure that this is coming through. That kick drum is a 24-inch. It's what I'm hearing. It sounds freaking huge. Okay, a couple details. When the kick drum is hit, it has a long sustain. So it's not short and punchy. That's a big, boomy, long, sustaining kick drum. And so part of that, okay, good. Part of that is there is no hole on the front of the head, and part of it is it's just a big, freaking huge kick drum. Trying to keep it family friendly here, but it sounds huge. Okay, now let's switch the kick drum. This is literally just going to be a smaller kick drum. Okay, let's see, what is this? This is a 20-inch kick drum, right? Okay, so I'm trying to not get caught too much in the weeds here, but the drum size really freaking matters. So that's big, boomy kick drum. Here's a small, this is a 20-inch kick drum. Okay, there's the snare drums changed a little bit there, but the kick drum, just literally listen to the difference of that. It sounds smaller. It has a shorter decay. The other detail on this is the head has a hole in it. So a lot of the air's coming out. It's not resonating as long with that. But it just overall sounds smaller. But it does also sound punchier and likely will cut through a mix a lot better. So what I want to hammer home is the freaking drum is the thing that makes the sound. You know, if you're reaching for samples or whatever, maybe you can use it to supplement. But if you pick that right thing from the start, if you know, I'm going for a tight, punchy, more articulate sounding kit, you can pick a smaller sounding kick drum, and it's going to give you all of that detail. The next thing, let's go back to my little slideshow here. Tuning and pitch, huge. Obviously, you can tune a drum. Let's just say, keep it simple, 3 different ways. You can have a lower pitched drum, which is going to sound a little bit fatter, have a lower frequency, or higher, which is going to actually sound smaller and probably cut through a bit more. The other thing is modifying the drum. This took me a long time to catch on to, but you can drastically change the sound of the drum by just like putting something on the drum. Sometimes, I see people buy like these moon gels and things. You don't need anything like that. You can use a sheet of paper, literally just notebook paper, just tape it on there. You can use tape. Gaffer's tape, if you don't have gaffer's tape, is an incredible tool to just sort of like control a little bit of the sustain of the drum. Sometimes it helps a little bit with ring, but I would also say don't be afraid of ring. These are like tasteful choices that you can make. What I want you to take away is how you can make them at the drum. Don't try and get rid of the ring with some EQ after the fact. Change the drum right in the spot. Get it right. I'm gonna do one other quick little example here. Listen. So the snare drum here. This is the same snare. Okay. So this is the kick drum changes here, but listen to the snare drum. Okay. Now listen to this snare drum. Same snare drum, different kick, but same snare. Quite a big difference. What changed? We put a bandana on it. We just laid a bandana on the head. It's the same snare. We didn't change any of the tuning. Okay, here's another example. Check out this snare. This is no dampening on the snare. And then here's with the bandana on. Just modified it, and it took 1 second to do. That shelf behind the drum kit you can see here is just filled with toys like bandanas, tapes, some of the whatever the big fat snare drum tools, things like that. There's obviously a ton of stuff you can buy. You can put your wallet on it. You don't need to buy stuff to modify it, but there's a lot of interesting tools on there. So modifying the drums is another super fast way to get there. Somebody says I need to crank the volume. All right. Let me know, is the volume low on my voice? Because it sounds like it's cranking for me here. Or is it playback? Let me know and I'll adjust that. And okay, so next, moving on, is the room. This I didn't think anything about when I started. I just was focused on the close miking and like the overheads. So drums low for all, voices hot, playback low. Okay. Let me adjust that for a second. Do a little mix on the fly here. Sorry, OBS is it's really, really great. The room that you have the drums in drastically affects the sound. Okay, so in ways that aren't obvious until you are in a different room. But I will say the room that your drums are in is kind of like the one unique thing that you have going for you. So you can adjust the room with some acoustic treatment. You can put more rugs in there. If you have like baffles meaning like insulation and a little panel that you can just move around the drum kit. You can also just have a bunch of stuff in your room, and that'll drastically change the sound of the room. The room is the unique character, quality of how the drums are interacting. And using room mics is such a sweet way to make your recording sound unique. Okay, so that's the sound. Those are the sources, right? The source of the sound is the drums, the sizes of them, how they're tuned, how you modify them, and then the room that you're in. That's the thing we're listening to. You're getting sounds of that. So you can adjust those at the source. That does so much of the work for you. Okay. Next, the capture. All right, this is again where people get a little crazy. Capture is just your mic setup. Okay, and this doesn't have to be complicated. There are some creative choices that you can make, but really you just want to get the basics right. Okay, so number one, what your mic placement do is essentially presenting the drums in a particular way. I like to think of it as more and less detail. Sometimes it's like an era thing, because like before the 70s, most drums that were recorded were just using like 1 to 3 mics on the drum kit, maybe 4. There just wasn't the bandwidth for it. There wasn't the channels. There wasn't the inputs for that many mics. The next, mic choice, obviously the character of the microphones, condensers, ribbons, dynamic, are going to play a role in what frequencies are being captured. But really, I think the biggest thing here, outside of how many mics you use, is mic placement. Okay, so I want to just simplify this because there's a lot of different ways to use, let's say, stereo miking. There's a lot of stuff that I think is distracting to the end result. And here's the takeaway. You've got 3 ways to place a mic. You've got close mics, you've got accent mics, and you have ambient room mics. Okay, close mic is exactly what it sounds like. It's right on that thing. It's right up on the snare. It's right on the tom. It's right on the kick drum. These are literally photos I just snapped, so you could just see where things are. There is nothing unique. There is nothing special about how I am recording these. There is no tricks. It's a mic close to the drum. If it doesn't sound right, I adjust the drum. I don't adjust the mic. The mic's, it's fine. You can tweak things at a certain point when you're doing mic placement later in the process, based on the taste, or if you're checking phase, which we'll get into in a second. So this is the close mics. Interesting point here is these are actually almost all condensers. The snare mic's condenser, tom. This kick out mic is a condenser. You can see I'm using 2 mics here, and then that's a dynamic, and it's kind of placed in front of the hole so I can have a little more control of the articulation of that drum. We'll come back to that. These are the accent mics. Accent mics is just like a few feet off of the source. Really common if you're recording percussion or string sections. Accent mics are really, really useful because they get a mix of that close source and the room in one. In drums, obviously, this is mostly used for overheads. Overheads are accent mics. Another thing to think about with mic placement is nice Romo drummer, is mono versus stereo. So that's going to be a big decision-making part of the mic placement section. The third is room mic, capturing the sound of that room. The thing about room mics, close mic accent, is the close mics I think are what people immediately go to. It's a super unnatural sound. Nobody listens to someone playing drums with their ear that close to a drum. Are they important? Are they very useful and you can get creative? Yes. It's super unnatural though. Accent mics are going to be some of the more natural sounding mic placements, and then room mics. And if you're not happy with the way that your room sounds, change it. Hang some clothes up. You can do packing blankets. You can use stuff that's cheap. If you can put some acoustic treatment on your ceiling and on your walls, it can make the biggest difference in that room. I mean, look at these 2 rooms I'm showing you here are bedrooms. So, this is not like some fancy, super expensive commercial place. I'm taking what I learned from working in studios like that and applying it to bedrooms. We just hung up some basic panels and good mics, good placement, but good drums. And that's really the front part of the sound here. All right, I'm going to move on here because there's just too much to cover. The next is once you have mics up, sort of like the guest check process, right? So you get mics set, you want to come get levels and listen, and a big component, if you're using multiple mics, that you have to learn about is phase. Now, I'm not going to do a full lecture on phase in this because it would take forever. But essentially, if you're recording one source with multiple mics, there's a frequency that comes off of that source. And if you have a mic at 2 different distances, that is going to cause those to essentially cancel out some frequencies. So what you want to do is you want to adjust your mic placement and use a polarity button on either your interface or on your DAW to listen to the difference, the cancellation of frequencies. And you want to try to minimize any of those cancellations between them. One thing I will just touch on here is when I actually track drums, I have a template. I have a couple different templates. If you're not familiar, that's just like doing a bunch of the work ahead of time. So when I go to start a new session, I don't have to spend time making these tracks. I've seen some people say like, oh, I don't use templates because I do different stuff every time. This does not by any means limit you to only using this. This just gives you a bunch of tracks that you can use. And I personally don't love creating and label. I don't like doing anything that can be automated, essentially. So I have all my drum tracks. There's 12 tracks here. Just inputs assigned, labeled. You can see I have some plugins and stuff on here. This is all prep for later down the line. Okay, so anything you can do to prepare yourself ahead of time is going to make the end result that much better, and it's going to make the experience when you're doing it go that much faster and that much easier. So we were just talking about phase. I'm just going to show you, I have these Pro Q EQs on each track, and you can see there's nothing on any of them because I just use them as a polarity switch. So if I am using 2 mics, let's say on kick drum, I can go in and I can solo my kick drum mic and I can reverse the polarity to listen to that change in phase. And what you don't want is for them to be sort of like, it's kind of good this way and it's kind of good this way. You don't want that, because that means you're missing a good amount of it. You actually want to have there be a huge loss in sound when you reverse that polarity switch. Because what that means is when you flip it again, you're getting most of what's there. So this is something that we go pretty deep in the course, but phase is an incredibly important part to actually capturing all of the sound that your drummer and drums are putting out. So you want to learn about phase, and you want to then go adjust it at the microphone. Don't adjust phase in here. You use the polarity switch as a tool to listen and to decide, but then you go and move the mic, because what the difference is that time difference. Okay, moving on. Next, we've covered the sound. The sound has the source and then the capture, right? Next, biggest thing that is going to, influence everything is the actual performance. And here's what I want you to think about. The performance side of it, you can kind of, before the session, try to think about it like this. Am I working with a band that has a drummer, or am I working with a session player? Because those two things, the more you record, you're going to learn there's a huge, massive difference between working with those two scenarios. If it's a band drummer, likely what that means is they just don't have as much experience recording in the studio, which means they're used to just playing however they play at rehearsal and however they play live. That just ain't the same in the studio, okay? And you can think about that as like how hard they're hitting the drums. Live drummers just hit different. And sometimes that's fine live, but in the studio, it's not good, because if a drummer's hitting too hard, and yes, a drummer can hit too hard, it can choke all the life out of the drum, out of the sustain out of the drum. You want that drum to resonate, and you can still give it impact and good hit without choking everything out of it. These are all things that session drummers kind of know and already do, hopefully, if you got a good one. But with band drummers, what I want you to think about is what you should be listening for if you know that you're working with someone who doesn't have a lot of experience. Number one, because they're probably just nervous in general and trying to just not mess up, and they're not thinking about these sort of things. So if you can listen for these things and calm the drummer down and just be cool and kind of work with them and say like, hey, let's try it a little softer, or maybe they do need to hit, maybe they're hitting too soft. And how do you decide? You decide because like, does it fit this song or not? Like some songs, the drummer hitting too hard ain't right for the song. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they're nervous and they're playing too quiet. It's like, hey man, hit that thing, kick that drum. Like, it's okay. The other thing you got to listen for, timing. Some people got it. Some people have something else. Here's what I would try to listen for. I would try to, if you're not with a session drummer, just listen for correct timing. Okay, what does that mean? I just mean like it's not obviously way out of time. You want them to be, if you're using a metronome, a click, you want it to be in sync with the other music, right? With the other performances. If it's too out, it's going to be almost impossible to fix. And you really, again, don't want to be fixing things later. So if you can, maybe it's a headphone adjustment. Maybe it's just like cooling the drummer down or whatever, and just like, hey, like try, like maybe be a little more on top of that click or something like that. The other thing, parts, what they're playing. Again, the experience of session drummers versus like band drummers is two very different things. And a band drummer, I'm just simplifying it to these two terms just to make it digestible, but generally they'll overplay. So they'll play too much, too busy. The kick drum will be going too much, maybe too many snare things, or the fills, are too much. Great for live shows. It's fun for live. But making a record, you want to always be serving the song, okay? And you may be thinking like, what the drummer's doing? What does this have to do with me getting great drum sounds? The part is it. I mean, the way they sound is one thing, but what they're playing is what really contributes to the end mix. You know, if the part is right with the performance in the song, that contributes to the mix. Also, timing of the performance contributes to the mix. Sometimes, a long time ago, I remember mixing a song and having some issues with the bass and the kick drum and just being like, what is going on? And kind of banging my head against the wall. And I eventually went to the edit window and looked at the time. I was like, oh, these are like, there's timing issues. Fixed those. And it was like, there we go. This is it's out of time. So getting the parts right, getting the performance right is going to be such a massive save to what you wind up doing later. So if you can get those are the three things. If you can get your source right, learn what decisions you can make with the tuning, the dimensions, the size, the capture, what mics you use, your mic setups. Try different mic setups. Try different mic positions. Try different room mic things. Mess around with where the drums are in the room. That actually, I mean, it's crazy the simplicity of what makes the difference. But try this stuff. And then the performance. Getting that performance tight. I mean, this is like, I understand this is like producer's responsibility. But a lot of us are at home. A lot of us are in project studios. And there's not a producer. So guess what? You got to be that producer. And if it's the producer's job to get the right performance, make sure that everything that's being recorded is done correctly. And if you can wear both of those hats, you're going to get the way better results. Okay? So when you get to the end of the process, review how it went, do an analysis, figure out what sucked, what you liked, what you didn't like, take pictures, save it to a folder, don't be lazy, and repeat it. Do it again, improve on it. Like the way you get better at this is not just listening to me talk about it or somebody else or watching some YouTube video. It's doing the freaking thing and then making drastic changes, trying totally different things. That's how you get the best difference and results. So if you let me know what you guys think. First off, if you have any questions, I'm going to get to the Q&A here in a second. If you want me to go a little bit deeper, let me know. Could I share a little bit about this drum course that I've been working on? Let me know in the chat. This is something that I wish I would have had years ago. It would have been so nice to just sort of redirect my focus. I'm going to go ahead and show you here. So this course is essentially everything that we've been talking about and way more, but we go super deep in depth on it. And instead of 3 things, there's really 4 pillars to this course. The sound, the capture, the source, how it's mic'd, how it's being recorded, as well as the production side, which we got into one part on that, which is the performance. And then the second part, which we didn't get into, is going to be the post-recording. So, I see this all the time in comments. I see this in unfortunately, there's a lot of trash advice on YouTube. I love YouTube and I love making videos. It's very hard, but if you're trying to fix stuff in the mix, like it's gone wrong. You want to get it right at the source, and the whole point of this course is to help you get drums at the source that sound so good they already sound mixed. And trust me, there is nothing better than finishing recording, someone coming in and you hitting play, and it already sounds great. You don't need a fancy studio to do that. Okay, you don't need an endless amount of studio gear. I love gear, and gear has an effect. I'm not saying it's pointless. Obviously, it has a purpose. But you can get away with amazing results with very little. I've done it many times before. The more you like to geek out and the more you want to invest in what you're doing and get some different tools, that's totally fine. But the course is going to have a 4-step drum recording system. So you don't, the goal is you want to basically know how to make good decisions. You want to know what decisions you can make. You want to know why you're making those decisions and then just how to do them so that it becomes subconscious. You want to not have to think about this stuff. It's in the beginning, you're just sort of trying stuff. I don't know, let's put some mics on it, right? I saw a funny reel on this the other day. And it's like the beginner is just sort of like, I don't know, I'll put a mic on, we'll see how it sounds. And then like intermediate engineer is like so crazy down the rabbit hole with all these ideas and rules and concepts. And then like a super experienced engineer is just like, yeah, I don't know, I'll put a mic on, it'll be fine. Truly, the context there is a pro engineer knows what they're doing. They know all the decisions and they're not going to go deep into it. They're just going to be like, yeah, I got it. We'll put some mics on. It'll be good. So I want to help teach you how you can think like a professional and get the results that you want without having to second guess yourself. You want to be able to capture the right drum sound at the beginning and then all the little details in there. We're going to have a lot of different little lessons. We're going to have a lot of A-Bs. There's going to be a lot of multi-tracks, tuning, modifying, mic placements, different mic setups. I want to teach you how to prepare your session, how you can, we'll go deep into phase. We're going to have some fun interviews, things like that. Here, this is the sales page. This is, if you check in the description, you can get all the details on the course, but these are some of the myths that we want to debunk in this course. Fixing it in the mix. Don't do that. Get it right at the source. You don't have to go to a huge drum studio or a huge studio to get great drum sounds. You can do it at home. That's where I'm doing it. Nashville is basically a whole city built on home studios. You need a ton of high-end gear. I already covered that. You don't need tons of gear. Everything, this is a fun one. Everything is just samples these days. The recording barely matters. That is for sure not a myth, and you do not want to be in a position where you're making recording choices because you think that it doesn't matter. You're probably not going to get a lot of work that way. You want to over-deliver. I mean, come on, man. Recording, if you're trying to make a living on it, you're trying to get good work, like you want it to be good. Samples are a tool, just like anything else. You use it to supplement what you're doing, if you even use it. Sometimes, a lot of times you don't even need samples, especially if you can get it right. So again, we want the course to be a no-brainer for you guys. If you have questions, again, put your questions in the chat. I'm going to jump over there in a second. There's going to be two options for the course. Right now, it's going on pre-sale. I want to be super crystal clear about this. The course launches and opens October 30th. Right now, today, we are announcing the pre-sale for the course. So if you get in before the course is officially live, you're going to get a huge saving on the course. So I've kind of gone over the 4 pillars of what's going to be in there. There's 2 options. You can get the course itself. Opens October 30th. Everything it comes with right there for half off, $300. And then there's a course plus mentor call, which is just going to be a direct one-on-one call with me and the course. And then these were some extra courses that I was going to do as add-ons, but we're just going to put them in there straight away. There's going to be a whole session that we do on getting big rock drum sounds, crash course, doing the session, walking you through the whole thing. And then we're going to do one on like getting more of an indie or pop dead drum. This is like a super popular thing right now. Crash course, that will be in there as well. And then the third bonus is going to be practice tracks. So like I said, I can give you all the information. You're not going to get better unless you do it yourself. So we're going to give you some full sessions that we've done here in the studio. One of them was recorded with like all high-end gear. Nice. And you can take the drum tracks that are in there and you can practice doing stuff with the drum tracks. But what I want you to do is to actually mute those drum tracks and try to recreate them yourself. But instead of just recording drums in isolation, which is not useful. I mean, it can be for some, whatever you're trying to practice, but hopefully you're trying to get drum sounds for the song that you're working on. So you're going to have the songs to get the drum sounds for. So we'll give you those multi-tracks. The other one is recorded exclusively with a entry-level interface. So these are just built-in mic pre's on an interface, and then you can actually record to that if that's the kind of rig that you're working on. You'll have both worlds, like the entry-level gear session and then the high-end expensive session that you can work on. So you can compare those. I want those to all just be like just a huge bonus for anyone who does this. This stuff takes time and experience and reps. So, you know, when you try stuff, just keep doing it, keep going through it. make drastic changes. There's nothing. The more I do this, the more I realize like when I'm mixing or when I'm recording, it's just like whatever's the biggest possible change that can be made to A B. That's the move. So yeah, you can sign up, enroll. The link is andrewmastersmusic.com/epicdrums. I'm probably gonna. I think I'm gonna do. Let me know if you want me to do this. I think we'll do a giveaway for the first 10 people that sign up. We'll give away some hilarious studio merch. I put together this merch store, and my buddy Will, Greasy Will, shout out to Greasy Will if any of you guys know or follow him. He did a merch giveaway for the first 10 people, and I thought that was great. This is some great t-shirts that you can either wear yourself or you can give to a friend, and then some good studio mugs. So we'll pick out some mugs that you can stock up in the studio, and we'll give them away to the first 10 people that join in on the course and get in early. All right, let's jump over to some questions here. And shout out to you guys. Thanks for bearing with me through this whole thing. I am not a streamer, and this is totally new. Man, we got a lot going on here. Okay, let's see some of these questions. Carrie Allen, what's up, dude? Shout out Counterspell band, great band out of Texas I worked with. All right, let's see here. If you can only have one kit for rock drums, this is from 2 Gem Music Production. If you can only have one kit for a rock drum sound, any advice for drum sizes? Yes. If it were me, I would go with what I describe as a classic studio kit dimension, which is going to be kick drum. That's 22 inches by 14 inches deep. So 22 diameter, 14. You can get really flexible with that kick drum. And again, all these details we're going to go through in the course in depth. Like it's going to be maybe too in depth. The big way to make that 22 really flexible is what kind of head is on the front, and whether or not there's a hole in it, and what you put inside or don't put inside. So a 22 by 14 is going to be an excellent kick drum size. And notice I didn't say brand or whatever model. Size. Size is what's going to do it. Sort of the flavors are going to be the brands and the models, which are, Ludwig's got great. I would say Ludwig actually makes fantastic new drums. I have their classic maple, which is more of the expensive lines that they offer. The Ludwig classic maple, I think it's the Fab 3 that I have. The kick drum's 22 by 14. The toms that come with it are bigger. They're 13-inch and 16-inch toms. That's like a real rockin' big. If you're looking for that big aggressive rock sound, I think the 22 by 14, 13, I think by 9, and then 16 by 16. I don't know what the depths are. But the diameter is what's important there. Also, when you're doing rock, a big component of that kick drum sound is going to be the beater that you use. And as I said, whether or not there's a hole or not in the front of the kick drum, that's going to determine how much sustain there is and whether or not you have access to the sound of that beater through the hole. So that's what I would say. Rock snare drums, Black Beauty's classic. They're kind of expensive now. So one of the snare drums, I got a Black Beauty literally when I was 15. 14 by 6.5 is a great size for a Black Beauty. Ludwig makes this snare called a universal metal snare. It's a super cheap snare, and it's kind of a Black Beauty thing. I have a 5.5-inch version of it, which is a little bit of a different sound, but that thing rocks too. So I would say, yeah, those are the dimensions I would focus on. 14, 6.5, great. You can get a lot of flexibility out of a snare like that. Black Beauty. Gretsch Bell Brass is very expensive, but also freaking rockin' snare. Yeah, I would get started there. Um, let's see. If your room sound isn't great, is it better to just close mic and use room emulation? This is a good question. Is it better? No, definitely not. What's better is to just mess around with the sound of the room. Again, you don't have to do super expensive stuff. A rug, some packing blankets. I think I showed you guys. Let me see. Let me pull this up again. No, that's my. Well, this is the drum room. Let me see. Where's my little keynote thing? Here's kind of a. Yeah, look at this. This picture on the left here is my drum room. This is a small bedroom. That's like the iPhone wide angle lens, so it looks cool and awesome. But it's actually a very small bedroom. I think there's 9-foot ceilings, so the ceilings are a little bit higher. But what I would say is smaller rooms actually wind up getting most of the time cooler drum sounds. This is a funny thing about perception versus reality. Most of the time in the big commercial rooms, if you're doing drums, the drums are having a bunch of baffles buried around them. And it is just, you're basically just trying to remove the sound of the room because it's too chaotic. A bigger room doesn't make bigger drum sounds. It just means it sounds like very roomy, which can be chaotic and not great in a mix. And so you'd be surprised how many huge records and how many records that have huge sounding drums were done in small rooms. And a lot of producers I've learned over the years choose to put drums in the booth or put drums in a smaller like area in the room and really baffle it up. So that's another trick. If you don't love the sound of the room, you can get some baffles and kind of baffle around the kit and tighten it up. This bedroom that my drums are in sounds freaking great. If you want to see, I did a video on this channel with my friend Sam Hunter. I think it's titled Nobody Records Like This Anymore. We just used 2 mics on drums. And the sound of the room played such a huge role in it because it sounds good. And it's a box. It's a box with rugs and, basic 2x4 panels. So there was no, you can get there easily. It is attainable in a bedroom. Room reverbs, I use reverb on drums as extra little sauce, but I wouldn't use it as a replacement for good drum room mics. Will the tracks be available to be downloaded? Yes. Yeah, you'll have access. As you go through each module, there will be both questions and answers, little exercises for you to do after we've kind of gone through some of the things. There's going to be downloadable files, sessions, multi-tracks, both from examples that we've done from different drums, stuff for editing practice, and there's also going to be just those full sessions for the bonus lessons. Let's see here. Do you use samples right after setting up the source? And if yes, how do you incorporate them in your workflow between recordings and post-production? Generally, no. I'll show you here. I do have, this is my session template. I do have the tracks built into the template, and this is just for ease. I want to be as prepared. I basically want the tracks in the session to be exactly how they're going to be when it's mix time. So I'm hearing in the beginning as close to how it will be at the end. And I want to be making decisions based on where it's going to be at the end, not where it is in the beginning. So the buses that I use for the kick and the snare sample are built into the template, but they're muted. This is something that will happen mostly, almost every time after drums are recorded. When we're recording, we're listening to everything I mentioned before, which is the source, the mics, the phase, the placement, and that performance. That's where all the attention's going. Getting all that stuff right is where all the initial focus is. If I'm not happy with how a kick or a snare is sitting in the mix, then I adjust it. I change something. I change mic, whatever. So I would say no, I'm not doing that at the front end. It is in the back end, but it is simply just unmuting it that makes it available. That's a really helpful part of the process. Okay, let's see. Okay, Marcus, currently recording drums at home in a room that's about 10 by 10. My mixing desk is also in that room. Any suggestions on maximizing the sound out of that space? Yeah, there's some cool stuff that you can do in a small room. Also, I would say, like, don't be scared of your room sounding small. Capture your room as it is. If you're in the same space, uh, in a smaller space, and you're using room mics, something that you can do is put something in between the actual drum and the room mic. And you could also face the mic away from the drum. So, like, I use, when I'm going for a bigger drum sound, I will use a separate room for my room mic. This is funny. Both of these are bedrooms and they're right next to each other. And so I just leave the doors open in between the two rooms, and I put the room mic in the room next over. This is sometimes the greatest freaking thing, even in commercial studios. If you put the drums in a booth, you just open the door to the booth, put room mics out there, because your room mics are much more natural and pleasant sounding. They're not getting a lot of that direct transients. They're just getting the rooms, which is much cleaner in the mix. So if I were putting room mics in the same room, like I think my room is not too far off from yours, I would put some baffles. You can see I have a baffle here, like in the corner. I would just move that maybe towards the front, or maybe put a room mic back behind that baffle. But this was something I learned on a session with Dan Wilson. We were recording, I think her name was Rita Wilson, Tom Hanks's wife, actually. And the engineer, we put low baffles in front of the kit on each side. We're doing stereo rooms, and we put the condensers down on the floor in Omni, pointed at the baffle. And I was like, when I saw that, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Sometimes these sessions are crazy because you just see the dumbest stuff. And then we went in the control room and we pulled up those faders. He had me patch into a Fairchild, which is like the most overpriced, expensive limiter in the entire world. And just literally pulled the faders up and was like, that is the greatest drum room sound I've ever heard in my entire life. Again, in a great drum room, so different circumstances. But that technique, you can try that. I've tried that before, where put a baffle in between the drum kit, put the room mic on the other side, and you can use some compression stuff, play around with that. Let's see. Dang, dude, a lot of questions here. Gary Allen, between the drum course and this Rush reunion, my visa is taking a beating this month. Dang, dude. Okay. Access to your drum template. Yeah, that will all be in there. I'll have several sort of templates, but there will also be me teaching you how to set up your template, how you're going to use it, and having some different options. But yeah, there will be templates in there as well. Do you ever take off the resonant head on the kick drum to get more beater? Yes. I haven't done it in a long time. Great question from Logan. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when the last time I did that. I think that was when I haven't done that since I lived in my house where I built my first epic home studio when I started YouTube. I had a little Slingerland. I think it was a 20-inch kick drum. And I took the front head off, and that sounded freaking great. It's also, you have so much flexibility on mic placement too. But it makes a much shorter, you have basically no resonance in the kick. It's just punch and some low frequencies. You're not getting sustain from it. So if that's what you're going for, then that's a great way. Literally just taking the head off. Alex, do you often work with acoustic drums with EDM artists? I know some pop artists are doing the acoustic sound super dry and then using samples to get the proper sound that they want. For example, in 1975. Do I often work with acoustic? I'm trying to think. I did a record with my friend Gabe for his sort of pop band, and we did this song called was it called? Love Anyway, I think it was called. Um, and yeah, it was basically a pop song. And we wanted to do drums, like real drums. Love Anyway. Yeah, that's the track. And it was very much that kind of thing. Um, but it was also like getting everything right in the beginning. There may be samples in there. I think I actually mixed that song. I don't totally remember. Um, yeah, it's tough. It's just, I mean, all the decisions you're making there, it's not about, you know, are we staying authentic and true? It's like, is this right for the song or not? And if not, what does it need? Like that should be everyone's main focus. So, sometimes the live drums add an element of feel and depth and air and things like that. And then sometimes the samples are just like there as a production element. Another record, John Mayer, I'm trying to remember what the song was, is a huge single of his. I love that. I'm in caps lock mode. It was on one of the recent, I think it was it this record or was it the one before? Oh, I remember. But yeah, I talked to Aaron Sterling about it, and he said that it was basically overdubs that they did. Let me see, Paradise Valley. Yeah, I think it was like one of these songs on here where basically he played, and they just used overheads for the kit. They had a drummer, they recorded the drum kit live, but it was like programmed samples, and they just used the overheads with it. Yeah, so that's super common. Again, we're just trying to make the best song we can. Max, here's a great question. How much processing do you do on the way in? Almost none on drums. And part of this is just you learn from failure and mistake. I mean, that's really all audio engineering. Outside of sometimes you learn from accidents that are happy accidents. Yeah, me when I record, it's the drum to the mic pre to the DAW. The way I have things set up, I do like to use hardware, but I use it on playback. So like in my template, you'll see on my mix bus here, I'll have things like this SSL EQ and a bus compressor. And then sometimes on the kick and snare, I'll use hardware. Like there's a Pultec on here. These are literally just pieces of hardware. But what I'll do is I'll have them ready so that when I'm not tracking and I come in to play, if I'm the drummer, the second I hit spacebar, we're hearing that through it. So it's like I'm using it to process on the way through, but I'm not actually committed. So that way I have some flexibility and I haven't just dug myself a grave, which I've done before and is very embarrassing. You don't want to be in that position. I'll tell you a very short, funny story where I failed. I did a record with Weezer, and we did got cool sounds. It was actually a small number of mics that we used on it. Recorded the whole thing to tape through the Neve console. It was one of the coolest freaking experiences as someone who grew up listening to Weezer. Got to sit in the control room, get sounds. Literally the whole band's playing live. The overhead and the rooms were ribbon mics. The overhead was an R88 ribbon stereo, and we had it running through a compressor, a Verimute compressor, and that thing was aggressive. It was just, those needles were dancing, fast attack, fast release, and it was the coolest thing ever for Weezer. I went on to do an R&B session after that, and I just loved the sound so much. I was like, I'm going to do this again, and recorded through it. And I remember later down the line, the artist being like, the drums are a little aggressive. Is there any way to make them, a little more clean? I was sort of like, well, I can turn that fader down, and so experiences like that teach you like, okay, save it for the back end. Like as long as the preamp, the sound, the source, the tuning, all that stuff is right on the front end, you can play around with all that stuff later. That was super embarrassing. Wound up being fine, but I learned a lesson that day. Okay. Oh, great question about phase. Okay, so this is going to be a big part of the capture module. on phase. The Necto asked, when you say about fixing the phase by changing the position of the mics, you assuming changing position of accent mics or close mics, or do you imply changing the distance ratio between the close and accent? It's usually at first, like for me, when I'll do it, one of the first things I'm checking is the phase relationship of the snare between the close mic and the overheads. And if I'm adjusting things, I'm not adjusting the distance of the close mic. The close mic stays there. And then the snare stays there. So what else can you adjust? The overheads. I did this with my friend Keith Armstrong, who was Chris Lord Alge's assistant for 20 years. And we did a drum session where it was a 4-hour session, and we were doing one song for like a pop punk thing, and we spent 3.5 hours moving mics. It was the craziest thing I've ever saw in a session, where it was like, what are we doing? This was the epitome of getting it right at the source. And this is a man who basically takes all these sessions from everyone and has to prep all of them and sort of pre-mix them for Chris Lord Alge. And so it was such a valuable lesson. But basically what we would do is we would solo up overheads and close mics on a source, like a snare. And we would go in and we would reverse the phase on the overheads. We would listen and we go, okay. And then there would be some change, and then we'd flip it back, and then we would go out. We'd both grab one mic for the overhead, and we'd raise it up. And we'd raise it like 4 or 5 inches. And then we'd go back. The drummer would play. The poor drummer. That was the worst for him. We go back and we flip it again. And we go, okay. And so then we make another 4 inches up, and we listen and flip. And what would happen is eventually when you went to hit the polarity button on the console, that snare all but disappeared. Like you would hear the kick and the hat, and then like the snare just sounded like it was gone. I mean, obviously you could sort of hear some characteristics of it, and that meant that when we flipped it back, the snare was the biggest, fattest, heaviest sounding thing ever. And so that's the process. It's basically going and moving whatever mics you're able to move and to adjust to get a different phase relationship between them. So that way you're not cutting any of the EQ or frequencies of that drum. You're getting the majority of them that is technically possible to get, and you get that by moving the mic. I got a lot of fun stories on phase, but that's essentially what I mean, and we'll go through that in the course. All right, here, let's see. Hi, John. When do you use EQ and then compression, and when the other way? Oh, good question. So let me go over here to the session. So the way I think about this now, since I'm using compression on hardware, sometimes I'll use plugins too. And if you're using plugins, you can think about it in a similar way. If you're boosting an EQ, you're raising the volume, right? So it's getting louder. And when you're compressing, you're sort of taming everything. So this is not necessarily a always this or always that. It's sort of a sometimes thing, right? So on my drum bus, I'll use this as the first example. I do EQ first and then compression. And that's just because I'm in hybrid here. So like that compressor is just the last point of level adjustment. I have a makeup gain on it. So I can EQ, it's going to boost some of the frequencies that I'm boosting. They'll do some cutting too. And then the compressor after that is basically allowing me to set my final level. So that's how I think about it with that. I'm trying to think of a case where I would do the opposite. Maybe sometimes on like the kick or the snare. I don't always compress both, but that's how I think about it more, is like, am I boosting a bunch into a compressor, or do I want to get my compression right and then like tastefully EQ after? This is a subjective thing, and it's a circumstantial thing. Rarely are there ever binary rules. With a lot of this is just taste. This is an art. Okay. I'll just mention again, today is launch of founder sale, pre-sale for the course, Epic Drum Recording. Learn to record drums that sound so good they mix themselves. Let me know what you guys think of that line. I think it's pretty good. Again, this is going to be I don't know if I mentioned this before. When it goes live, this is going to be a closed course, so it's not even going to be like open forever. We're just doing this. It's going to be a one-off launch. We're going to get the first group of people in and work with them, and then it's going to close. It officially launches the 30th of October, and you can get it at a half off steal right now at the link in the description. So go check that out. I'll answer a couple more questions here, and then I'm going to let you guys go, get back to your day, put some mics on drums and record some stuff. Let's see here. Where's my thing? Do you ever have any troubleshooting for hissing in a mic? I find even adding a pad or turning down the gain hasn't worked, and confirmed it is not HVAC. This is in my overheads. Yeah, that's fun. It can be a lot. I would have to ask some follow-up questions on troubleshooting there, but I would check power. I would check whether or not you have lamps in the room. Sometimes a certain kind of lamp, or sometimes like a certain kind of power strip if it's cheap or not wired well. Sometimes it's dimmers in the walls. If you have a dimmer, turn the dimmer off, see if that changes anything. I'm thankfully don't have to experience that, but it's usually a power-related issue. So something maybe in the room on the same circuit could be causing that. I'm also not an electrician. I am a drummer, so probably not the right guy there. Also, of course, it can be a cable somewhere. Sometimes it's like you check your XLR, sort of the first dummy move. If you're using a patch bay, it could be a patch cable. There's, it could be noisy connections there. Let's see here. Steven, I built a mini room using PVC. Wait, what? I built a mini room using PVC pipe and moving blankets to record in. Okay. Is it okay to record in a completely dry environment with no room sound, then adding room care? Okay, so this is kind of a similar question. Yes, but still put a room mic up. I know it sounds crazy, but just that distance between the mic and the kit, and if you can separate it with something as well, is going to make the drum sound better. Close mics just sound so uninteresting. Put a room mic up, even if it's a dry room. The dry room sounds cool. It also is like a check on the performance in the player. And if they hear that room mic, they're going to adjust how they play. And I promise you, it's going to be for the better of the song and the mix. So yes, I'm just like, put room mics up, get used to it, get better at it, try stuff. Holy cow. If the band wants to record everything in one go in the same room, guitar amps in ISO, bass is DI, what do you do to reduce the drum bleed into vocal mics and into vocal recording? Best thing you can do is not point the vocal mics at the drums. Put the null point at the drums. If you can, sort of barricade the singer. If the drums are in the room, you're going to hear it. Some mics have better off-axis rejection than others. But what I would do is I would tell them, unless it's for a live performance. If it's a live performance, then just let it be a vibe. It's going to be a part of it. And guess what? You got another room mic now. But if you can, what I would say is get them to perform live together to get the emotion for the band, the instruments, with the vocalist in the room, and then overdub vocals. You want to overdub vocals if you're making a record anyway, because you want to get the best possible performance. You want to get, go through parts and, do harmonies. You want to add to it. You want to get the most emotion out of that vocalist, and doing that separately is just going to give you a much better sound, and the singer and the band's going to want the best sound. So, also it's going to be very hard to comp if the vocals are in there. So I guess it depends on what you're doing. If you're literally doing a live performance for the purpose of like a video or something, versus actually making a record, because those are two very different things you would do. Steven, it's so small that the overheads would be the room. well, you know, try it, see how it goes. Uh, let's see. The hiss faded away when I lowered the lights. Looks like I need a Furman, lol. All right. Do you ever use trash or crotch mic? Sometimes. Sometimes I do. I think I, as time has passed, I really just like using as few things as possible. Um, but again, it always depends on the record of the song. If I was doing something that was like aggressive and rock, or maybe like lo-fi kind of boom bap drum sound or hip hop thing, then that might be fun to do, like crotch mic or some ambient mics for effects. We did that on the Sum 41 record. We did 3 sets of room mics, basically like close rooms, medium rooms, and far rooms, and it wasn't to have all 3 sets of rooms on all the time. It was to have different perspectives for different moments in the songs, and usually used as an effect for transition. So you would, like, maybe on a fill or like a drop outwards, just drums, they would mute all the close mics and just use one stereo set of room mics, and they would be like compressed and have some EQ on them or something like that as an effect, a production effect essentially. So yeah, you can. There's some pretty cool mics that you can use for that kind of stuff. You can also use like headphones for an effect mic, which can be fun. So that's it. I'm going to jump off here. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys got a lot of value from this. If you signed up for the email, you'll get the replay link on it. So enjoy coming back to this. Focus on those 3 things that we covered in the class. Big thank you to anyone who has signed up for the course. And if you did, I will see you in there, and we're going to get into it. So if not, I will see you guys back on the channel whenever there is another video. We have some pretty cool stuff coming up this month on the channel. Some things I'm sitting at right now that I can't talk about until tomorrow, and some other fun things, but appreciate you guys, and have a good rest of your day. I am going to get out of here. Let me figure out how to turn this thing off.